Elias Vance had built a quiet life far away from the noise of war. His home stood on the edge of the green plains of New Solara, a peaceful human colony orbiting a small yellow sun. The air was fresh, and the nights were filled with the soft hum of wind through the tall grass. For years he had kept to himself, raising his daughter Lyra and tending to their small piece of land. To most people, he was just another farmer who enjoyed the calm rhythm of the seasons. The truth was different. Years ago, Elias had been Commander Vance, leader of Earth's elite space marines. He had served in battles that most citizens had only read about in history archives. He had fought on frozen moons and burning asteroid cities. But all of that was behind him now. After losing too many friends to war, he had sworn to protect only one thing from then on: his family. Lyra was 16 now, bright-eyed and curious. She had inherited her father's sharp mind and her late mother's gentle nature. She loved exploring the nearby hills and often visited the small market in the town square. Elias trusted her. New Solara was safe, or so he thought. One calm afternoon, Lyra headed into town to buy supplies. The sun was warm and the streets were busy with traders unloading goods from cargo skiffs. She carried a list in her hand and hummed a tune as she walked past the stalls. People greeted her warmly. She was known as the polite daughter of the quiet farmer who lived on the plains. What she did not know was that trouble had arrived in town earlier that morning. 3 men wearing the black and gold armor of planetary security had landed in an unmarked shuttle. Officially, they were here to investigate smuggling in the area, but in reality, they were working for a powerful corporate syndicate that wanted to buy land for a mining project. Families who refused to sell were facing intimidation. As Lyra passed near the edge of the market, the 3 men spotted her. She fit the description of another girl who had been delivering messages for the families resisting the corporate buyout. Without checking her identity properly, they decided to detain her for questioning. The lead officer, a tall man with a hard expression, stepped in front of her and ordered her to stop. Confused, Lyra asked if there was a problem. Instead of explaining, the men insisted she follow them to their shuttle. She refused, frightened and unsure why they were stopping her. The market crowd grew quiet, people sensing tension but afraid to interfere. The officers insisted again, their tone growing colder. Lyra tried to step away, but one of them moved to block her path. Finally, they told her she was suspected of working against planetary law. She tried to explain she was only buying supplies for her father, but they ignored her words. After several minutes of confusion and pressure, they forced her toward their shuttle. She was not harmed severely, but their rough handling and harsh tone left her shaken and frightened. Inside the shuttle, they scanned her ID and realized she was not the person they were looking for. Without apology, they dropped her back near the market and warned her to be careful who she spoke to. Lyra hurried home, her shopping bag clutched tightly to her chest. Elias was working in the tool shed when she returned earlier than expected. One look at her pale face and wide eyes told him something was wrong. He set down the wrench in his hand and walked toward her slowly, trying to keep his voice calm as he asked what had happened. Lyra's words came in short bursts. She told him about the officers, the accusations, and the way they had forced her toward their shuttle. She insisted she had done nothing wrong, and her voice shook as she described the cold look in their eyes. Elias listened without interrupting. His hands clenched slightly, but his expression stayed neutral for her sake. When she finished speaking, Elias asked her to sit and drink some water. Inside, his mind was already working like the commander he used to be. He knew that legitimate security officers would not treat a young civilian in such a way without reason or evidence. This smelled of private contracts and corruption. He also knew something else. Men like that did not stop with one mistake. If they were working for someone dangerous, the trouble would only grow. That night, after Lyra went to bed, Elias sat at his old desk. He pulled a small metal box from a locked drawer and opened it. Inside lay his service tags, a folded piece of red battle cloth, and a data chip. The tags were scratched and worn from years in the field. The cloth was from his old unit's flag. The data chip contained encrypted contact codes for people he had not spoken to in years. For a long time, he had tried to leave that world behind. But now, looking at the chip, he felt the weight of choice pressing on him. The peaceful farmer, in him, wanted to believe this was an isolated mistake. The soldier in him knew better. These men had acted with boldness because they believed no one would stop them. Elias turned on his console and began pulling up public records. He searched for any mention of unusual activity involving planetary security. It did not take long before he found patterns. Complaints filed and ignored, families selling land under pressure, quiet settlements near the mining zone. The corporation behind it all was called Solara Minerals, and its reach extended far beyond this colony. When he shut down the console, Elias stared out of the window into the night. The stars shone bright and cold above the plains. He thought of the years he had spent in service, the oaths he had taken, and the reasons he had walked away. He had hoped to give his daughter a life without the shadow of violence, but peace, he realized, was not given freely. It had to be protected. In the darkness, he made a silent promise to himself and to Lyra. Whatever these men were planning, whatever this corporation thought it could do, they had chosen the wrong family to threaten. Elias Vance was no longer just a farmer. The commander had returned. The next morning, the sun rose over the plains of New Solara, casting a warm golden light across Elias Vance's farm. Birds chirped near the water trough, and the air carried the smell of fresh soil. To anyone passing by, it looked like another peaceful day. But inside the farmhouse, Elias was already up, his mind set on finding out who those so-called security officers really were. Lyra was still asleep, her breathing steady. Elias made sure not to wake her. He brewed a pot of strong coffee, then sat at his desk with a small notebook. Years of military habit kept his thoughts organized. He wrote down everything Lyra had told him about the incident, details about the men, their uniforms, their ship, and the time of day. In his experience, small details often led to big answers. After finishing the notes, he went to the shed and retrieved an old black case from the top shelf. Inside was a compact, rugged computer terminal from his service days. Most people on the colony used standard civilian devices, but this one was built for secure operations. It still held military-grade decryption software and signal tracking tools. Elias powered it on and began searching for transport records. The planetary security uniforms could be bought legally by contractors working with the government. That meant these men could be legitimate on paper, but corrupt in practice. Elias traced the landing records for the day before and found an unregistered shuttle arrival. The identification codes had been masked, but the masking was amateur compared to what he had seen in the war. With a few adjustments, he uncovered the real ID, a vessel registered under a small private security company called Kestrel Force. Elias remembered the name. During his service, Kestrel Force had been hired by off-world corporations for high-risk extractions and enforcement. Their reputation was mixed, effective in dangerous zones, but often accused of working outside legal boundaries. It made sense that a corporation like Solara Minerals would use them. Elias closed the terminal and stood up. The soldier in him was waking again. He knew that dealing with this situation alone would be risky. He also knew that he could not ignore it. The thought of Lyra facing those men again made his jaw tighten. Later in the day, Elias decided to visit town. He wanted to walk the streets where Lyra had been taken, to see if anyone had witnessed the event and was willing to speak about it. He dressed in simple clothes, but under his jacket he carried a small personal shield device, a piece of old tech he had kept for emergencies. The market was lively with traders calling out their goods. Elias moved slowly, scanning faces and body language. Most people avoided talking about the incident when he mentioned it. Fear was written in their eyes. A few lowered their voices and told him they had seen similar things before. People taken for questioning, then released after agreeing to sell property or stop protesting the mining expansion. No one wanted to speak on record. Elias thanked them and bought some supplies to avoid drawing suspicion. He noticed a small food stall run by an older man named Joran. Elias had met him a few times before, and the man had a reputation for being honest. When Elias asked quietly about the men in black and gold armor, Joran glanced around before leaning closer. "They are not here for the law," Joran said in a low voice. "They work for the miners. Anyone who does not sell land is harassed. Until they give up. The governor does nothing. People are afraid." Elias nodded and paid for a bag of bread. That was enough confirmation for now. He left the market and returned home, his mind already forming a plan. This was no longer just about defending his own family. It was about protecting the whole colony from exploitation. That evening, Elias took out the encrypted data chip from the metal box. He plugged it into his old terminal and browsed the list of names stored there. They were former squad mates and trusted allies, people who had served with him in the hardest campaigns of the Jarek Wars. Many were retired, some running their own small businesses, others working in security or engineering. Contacting them would mean exposing himself and drawing attention, but if the situation escalated, he might need their help. He sent out a coded message using an old military comm channel still hidden from civilian networks. The message was short and clear. "Need eyes and ears on Solara Minerals activity. Possible Kestrel Force contract. Situation involves family. Will advise." When the message was sent, Elias sat back in his chair and thought about the years he had tried to bury his past. He had hoped never to involve his old comrades again, but the truth was, they were some of the only people he could fully trust. If they came, it would mean war for whoever was behind this. The night sky was clear, and the twin moons cast pale light over the plains. Elias stepped outside and looked toward the horizon, where the lights of the town shimmered faintly. Somewhere, out there, those men were making plans, confident that no one could challenge them. They did not know who they had crossed. In the morning, a reply came through the encrypted channel. It was from Arik Hale, his old second-in-command. The message was brief. "Understood. I can be there in 3 days. Tell me what you need." Elias felt a small sense of relief. If Arik was coming, others would likely follow. Lyra noticed the shift in her father's mood during breakfast. She asked if something was wrong, and Elias told her only that he was looking into what had happened. He did not want to alarm her with too much detail yet, but he reassured her she would be safe. By midday, Elias had a plan. He would continue gathering information quietly until Arik arrived. He needed to learn more about the corporation's land plans, their connection to the governor, and the full extent of Kestrel Force's presence on the colony. If he could map out their operations, he could dismantle them piece by piece without putting innocent people at risk. That day, Elias realized something important. He was no longer just a retired soldier. He was once again a commander, and his battlefield was not a war-torn moon or a hostile alien world. It was his own home, and he would defend it with everything he had. Elias Vance started his morning earlier than usual. The air was still cool, and the first light of the sun stretched over the plains. Lyra was asleep upstairs, and he wanted to keep it that way for now. Today was not a day for farming. Today was for gathering intelligence. He returned to the shed and opened the black case that held his old equipment. Inside were tools from another life, compact scanners, signal intercept devices, and a small drone that folded neatly into a pack. Civilian drones were common, but this one had been modified during the war for stealth surveillance. It could fly high and silent, collecting images and recording signals without being detected by most local scanners. Elias packed the drone, a handheld scanner, and a short-range encrypted communicator into a weathered satchel. He left the farmhouse without noise, heading toward the ridge that overlooked the town. From there, he could see the market, the spaceport, and the main road that led to the governor's building. By the time he reached the ridge, the sun was fully up, and the town below was busy. He activated the drone, watching as its small rotors unfolded and it rose into the air. Through his visor, he saw the live feed, streets, rooftops, and alleys, all in sharp detail. Elias guided the drone toward the spaceport first. The unregistered shuttle from the other day was gone, but a different black and gold transport was parked near a secured hangar. Two men in the same armor stood guard at the entrance, speaking to a third man in plain clothes. The plainclothed man carried a datapad, checking information before waving them inside. The feed captured their faces, and Elias stored the images for later comparison. Next, he directed the drone toward the edge of town, where the mining corporation had set up its temporary offices. Several armored vehicles were parked outside, and workers were unloading crates marked with the Solara Minerals emblem. Through the drone's audio pickup, Elias heard parts of their conversation. They spoke about upcoming land purchases and mentioned the governor's approval. It was clear this operation was not only known to local officials, but supported by them. While the drone circled above, Elias used his handheld scanner to search for active communication signals. He found one strong encrypted channel operating from within the mining office. It was sending bursts of data toward an orbital relay. That meant instructions or reports were being sent off-world, probably to the corporation's central command. Elias noted the frequency and encryption pattern. It was advanced for civilian use but still breakable with the right tools. That would be a task for Arik Hale when he arrived. Arik had been the best signal specialist in their unit, capable of breaking hostile codes in minutes. With the drone's battery running low, Elias brought it back to his position. It landed silently beside him, folding back into its compact form. He packed it away and started down the slope toward town. He wanted to gather information from ground level as well. In the market, he kept his movements casual, blending in with shoppers and traders. He stopped at stalls to buy food and supplies, listening to the conversations around him. People were talking about increased patrols, unexpected property inspections, and new mining zones being announced. The tension in the air was clear, even. If most people tried to hide it, Elias noticed a young vendor who seemed more alert than the rest. The boy was selling mechanical parts and tools, and his eyes followed the armored men who walked through the square. When one passed close by, the boy's shoulders stiffened. Elias approached the stall and bought a small tool kit. In a low voice, he asked the boy if the men in black and gold had been around often. The boy glanced around, then gave a quick nod. "They come every few days," the boy whispered. "Sometimes they ask questions, sometimes they take things. People are afraid to say anything. They work for the miners, but they act like they own the town." Elias thanked him quietly and moved on. Every detail confirmed what he already suspected. This was not random harassment. It was a systematic push to control the colony's land and silence opposition. By midday, Elias returned home. Lyra was in the garden tending to the vegetables. She greeted him with a smile, but he could see in her eyes that she was still shaken from what had happened days earlier. He told her he had gone to check on some business in town, leaving out the full details. She did not press him for answers, trusting him to handle it. After lunch, Elias reviewed the drone footage on his secure terminal. The faces of the two armored guards were matched against a public mercenary database he still had access to. Both were listed as former corporate enforcers from outlying sectors. Neither had official clearance to operate on New Solara, yet here they were, fully armed. Elias compiled a file with the evidence he had gathered, images, signal logs, and recorded audio. It was not enough yet to take action, but it was enough to prove a pattern. Once Arik arrived, they could begin a deeper investigation and possibly expose the entire operation. In the evening, Elias received another encrypted message. This one was from Rena Talvek, a former reconnaissance pilot who had served under his command. She had intercepted his earlier call for assistance and was offering her help. She could arrive within 4 days, bringing her own surveillance equipment. Elias sent a brief reply confirming that her help would be welcome. As the sun set, Elias stood outside, watching the horizon where the lights of the town flickered. He could almost feel the network of influence stretching from those lights, the mining corporation, the hired mercenaries, and the corrupt officials working together. He knew that confronting them would be dangerous, but he also knew they had underestimated him. The commander inside him was no longer just stirring. He was fully awake, focused, and ready. This was not a mission he had chosen, but it was one he would see through to the end. The safety of his daughter, his home, and the colony depended on it. 3 days after sending his message, Elias Vance stood on the edge of the small landing pad outside his farm. The wind carried the faint hum of an approaching engine. A sleek, dark gray shuttle came into view, its wings folding slightly as it slowed for landing. The craft touched down with a soft hiss, and the rear hatch lowered. Arik Hale stepped out first. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and still carried himself with the discipline of a soldier. His hair was shorter than Elias remembered, but the sharp, calculating eyes were the same. He wore light armor under a travel coat and carried a single pack over his shoulder. Elias met him halfway, and they shook hands firmly. "It has been a long time," Arik said. "Too long," Elias replied. "Glad you came." "I owed you more than one favor," Arik said, glancing toward the farmhouse. "And you mentioned family. That means this is serious." They walked inside, where Lyra greeted Arik politely. Elias had told her only that an old friend was visiting. Over a simple meal, Elias laid out what he had learned so far: the mercenaries, the mining corporation's push for land, the possible involvement of the governor. Arik listened closely, occasionally asking for small details. When Elias showed him the captured communication frequency from the mining office, Arik's eyes lit with recognition. "This is standard for Kestrel Force," he said. "They used it during a private contract on Vega Prime. I can break this code in a day, maybe less." That night, Arik set up his compact signal rig in the spare room. The small case unfolded into an array of antennas and processors. Elias left him to work, knowing Arik preferred silence when breaking encryption. By morning, Arik had results. "They are sending daily status reports to a corporate hub in the Thalos sector," he said. "And they are also receiving specific targets for land acquisition. Families who refuse to sell are flagged for pressure operations." Elias's jaw tightened. Pressure operations was just a polite way of describing harassment. Arik also discovered something else. A larger Kestrel Force transport ship was scheduled to arrive in 2 weeks, bringing more personnel and equipment. That meant the corporation was planning to increase its presence on the colony quickly. If they did not act soon, it would become much harder to push them out. 2 days later, another shuttle arrived. This one was piloted by Rena Talvek, the reconnaissance expert Elias had served with on several missions. She was fast-talking, sharp-eyed, and confident. Her ship, a compact scout vessel, was equipped with advanced sensors and stealth capabilities. "Rena," greeted Elias with a grin, "I hear you have mercenaries causing trouble. Thought you might need someone to watch from the shadows." Her arrival boosted their ability to monitor the enemy. With her ship's sensors, they could track vehicle movements across the colony without being detected. Rena quickly located the main base where the mercenaries were staying, just outside, the mining site. The base was heavily guarded, with automated turrets and security drones patrolling the perimeter. A day later, a final ally joined them. Darius Cole, a former heavy weapons specialist, arrived on a freighter hauling cargo between colonies. He was still as solid as a tank and had the same calm, steady manner that had made him a reliable presence in the field. He brought with him a few crates of equipment, most of it legal, but some clearly meant for tactical operations. With 4 veterans together again, the quiet farm began to feel like a forward operating post. They kept their activities hidden from the outside world. Lyra helped by maintaining normal routines, so anyone watching the farm would think nothing unusual was happening. One evening, the group gathered in Elias's study to review what they had. Arik displayed a map of the colony on the wall. Red markers showed the corporation's active sites, while yellow markers showed the homes and farms under pressure to sell. A growing number of yellow markers told a clear story. This was a coordinated takeover. They are moving in sectors, Arik explained. Each week they target a new group of properties. By the end of the year, they will control almost everything within 50 kilometers of the mining zone. Rena pointed to a cluster of red markers. This is their core operation. If we can disrupt their supply chain and communications here, it will slow them down. Darius leaned forward. And if they lose time, the Colony Council might start asking questions. Public pressure could force the governor to stop backing them. Elias nodded. We cannot just confront them directly yet. We need to weaken them first. Hit their operations in a way that looks like accidents or system failures. If they cannot operate smoothly, they will make mistakes. They spent the rest of the evening planning. Rena would keep watch from the air, tracking movements and recording evidence. Arik would intercept communications and plant false signals to confuse the mercenaries. Darius would quietly disable equipment and vehicles at key sites. Elias would coordinate and handle ground-level observation. By the end of the meeting, they had a list of first targets, fuel depots, supply trucks, and satellite relays. These were not glamorous targets, but they were essential to the corporation's operations. Without fuel, their transports would stall. Without functioning relays, their communications would lag, and coordination would break down. That night, Elias stood outside the farmhouse, looking up at the stars. The sound of the wind carried across the plains. Years ago, he had led men and women into battle across the galaxy. Now he was leading friends into a different kind of fight. One for home, one for his daughter's safety. The stakes were just as high. In the distance, faint lights from the mining site blinked in the darkness. Elias could feel the old rhythm, returning, the steady patience of a commander preparing for the first move in a long campaign. The mercenaries and their employers believed they held control. They would soon learn they had underestimated the wrong people. The morning sky over New Solara was pale and clear when Elias Vance stepped out of the farmhouse. The cool breeze carried the smell of fresh soil from the fields. On the surface, it was a peaceful day, but the air around the farm held a different kind of energy. Inside, Arik Hale was checking the latest intercepted messages. Rena Talvek was in her small scout ship running aerial scans. Darius Cole was preparing the tools for tonight's first operation. The plan was simple, but effective. Disrupt the corporation's ability to operate without revealing who was behind it. If they acted with precision, the mercenaries would begin to lose their grip without knowing why. Their first target was a fuel depot on the edge of the mining site. The depot supplied transport shuttles, armored vehicles, and construction equipment. Without it, operations would slow to a crawl. Rena had spotted a weakness in the depot's security, an older automated system that relied on a single network, hub. If the hub was disabled, the entire system would shut down. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Darius and Elias moved quietly through the outer fields. They wore dark clothing and carried small packs. Arik remained at the farm, ready to intercept any alarm signals and send false reports to the mercenaries' central system. The depot was surrounded by a low-energy fence and 2 patrolling drones. Elias timed their movements, noting the gap between patrols. When the drones passed out of sight, he and Darius slipped through a section of the fence where the current was weakest. They moved quickly toward the main building, staying in the shadows. Inside the depot yard, the air smelled of fuel and machine oil. Rows of storage tanks stood under the faint light of overhead lamps. The network hub was located in a small building, near the edge of the yard. Darius worked on the door, his hands moving with quiet precision. Within seconds, the lock clicked open. Inside, the room was filled with humming servers and blinking lights. Darius connected a small device to the hub's main port. It sent a surge through the system, quietly overloading the processors without triggering alarms. The servers shut down and the lights went dark. Outside, the energy fence powered off and the security drones froze in place. Elias and Darius retreated the same way they had come. By the time they reached the fields, Arik's voice came over the communicator. "No alert sent. They think the outage is due to a maintenance glitch." The following day, confusion spread through the mercenaries' ranks. Without fuel, several vehicles were stranded at work sites, and shuttles remained grounded. Delays began to stack up, and the mining operation slowed. Encouraged by their success, the team moved to their second target 2 nights later, a satellite relay station used for off-world communication. This station was less guarded but located in open terrain, making it harder to approach without being seen. Rena handled this operation from the air, flying her scout ship low and slow under the cover of night clouds. From the air, she deployed a small magnetic drone that attached itself to the relay's main antenna. The drone sent out a jamming signal, distorting every transmission. Messages leaving the colony became scrambled, and incoming orders from corporate headquarters were unreadable. By morning, the corporation's central office was demanding explanations, but the mercenaries could not provide clear answers. For a week, the team carried out more operations. Darius disabled heavy equipment at construction zones by removing small but critical parts that would take days to replace. Elias planted small sensor beacons near the mercenary base to track their movements in real time. Arik sent false location reports that drew patrols away from key areas. The mercenaries began to show signs of frustration. Elias could see it in the way they moved around town, more tense, more suspicious, but no closer to finding the cause of their troubles. One afternoon, while Elias was in the market buying supplies, he overheard 2 mercenaries talking near a supply truck. "They say more reinforcements are coming," one muttered. "If this keeps up, we will need them." "Reinforcements cost money," the other replied. "The bosses won't be happy if the mining output keeps dropping." Elias, left without drawing attention, satisfied that their efforts were working. But he also knew reinforcements would make things more complicated. The arrival of more personnel meant they had limited time to finish their disruption and prepare for the next phase. That night, the team gathered in the farmhouse study. Arik displayed a new map, showing the recent movement of mercenary patrols. "They are spreading themselves thin," he explained. "They are trying to protect too many locations at once. If we keep hitting small but important targets, they will have to pull back from the outer sectors." Rena leaned back in her chair. "And when they pull back, we will know exactly where they are weakest." Elias studied the map. "We keep pressure on them until they make a mistake. When they do, we will strike directly at the heart of their operation." Everyone agreed. The counterstrike was working, but this was only the beginning. As the night grew quiet, Elias stood by the window, looking out across the dark plains. Somewhere in the distance, the mercenaries were trying to figure out who was behind their sudden problems. They would search for enemies in the colony council, among the miners, maybe even among their own ranks. The truth was standing right here, on the farm, hidden in plain sight. The retired commander knew they would not remain hidden forever. Soon, the enemy would grow desperate enough to make bold moves, and when that happened, Elias and his team would be ready. The wind was sharp over the plains when Elias Vance woke before sunrise. He could sense the change before seeing it. The past few weeks had been a careful game of disruption, but today felt different. The enemy would not keep playing defense forever. In the farmhouse kitchen, Arik Hale was already awake, staring at the comm screen. "They are moving," Arik said without looking up. "A large group left the mining site an hour ago. They are headed toward the outer settlements, and the path will bring them close to here." "How many?" Elias asked. "At least 12. Mercenaries in 3 armored transports," Arik replied. "They are not on a supply run. This is a sweep." Elias knew what that meant. The mercenaries had decided to take control by force, showing the colony they were still in charge. The trouble was they had chosen the wrong area to pass through. By the time the first light touched the fields, the team was ready. Rena Talvek was in the air, her scout ship flying low beyond the hills. Darius Cole was setting up a portable shield generator along a narrow stretch of road. Arik stayed inside with the comm rig, intercepting and jamming the enemy's communications. Elias took position on the ridge above the road. From there, he could see the dust trail of the approaching transports. The engines rumbled like distant thunder. He raised his small field scope, confirming the black and gold armor of Kestrel Force. As the transports came into range, Darius activated the shield generator. A transparent barrier shimmered across the road, invisible until the lead. Vehicle slammed to a stop. The other 2 braked hard, forming a line. Confused voices shouted over open comms, trying to figure out what had happened. From the ridge, Elias called down through an amplifier, his voice carrying clearly. "Turn around and leave this area. You are not welcome here." One of the mercenaries stepped forward, scanning the ridge. "Identify yourself," he demanded. "I am someone who has been watching you," Elias replied. "You have harassed civilians for the last time." The mercenaries exchanged glances. Their leader signaled to his men, and 2 of them began moving toward the barrier to test it. That was the moment Rena struck. Her ship swooped in low, engines roaring, and dropped a flare that landed just meters from the lead vehicle. The sudden flash of light and heat sent the mercenaries stumbling back. "Shields are holding," Darius reported through the comm. "They will not get through without heavy equipment." The leader of the mercenaries tried to contact his base, but Arik's jamming cut off every signal. Frustrated, the man turned back to his group, shouting orders. The mercenaries began spreading out, looking for another route. Elias decided it was time to end the standoff. He slid down from the ridge, walking toward the barrier, until he stood, only a few meters away from the mercenaries. His calm steps and steady posture made them hesitate. Even through the helmet visors, he could feel their uncertainty. "You have 2 choices," Elias said clearly. "Leave now, or watch every one of your operations on this colony fall apart." The leader tried to mask his doubt with anger. "You think you can stop us alone?" "I am not alone," Elias said. As if on cue, Rena's ship passed overhead again, casting its shadow across the road. From the hill behind, Darius appeared, holding a control device for the shield generator. And in the distance, the sound of approaching farm vehicles could be heard. Local settlers who had quietly been warned by Elias and now came to stand behind him. The mercenaries were outnumbered in position, if not in weapons. Their leader finally signaled for them to pull back. They loaded into the transports, reversed down the road, and disappeared in a cloud of dust. When the last engine faded, the settlers cheered quietly, relief showing on their faces. But Elias did not relax. He knew this was not the end. The mercenaries had retreated because they were caught off guard. Not because they were beaten. They would report to their employers, and the corporation would respond. Back at the farmhouse, the team gathered to assess what had happened. Arik reviewed intercepted messages. "They are calling this a temporary withdrawal," he said. "They are already planning to regroup at their main base." "That means we will not have long before they try again," Rena said. Elias nodded. "Then we take the fight to them before they can make their next move. No more small strikes. We go after the heart of their operation." Darius leaned forward. "The base near the mining site." "Yes," Elias said. "It is where they keep their supplies, their command center, and their records. If we destroy or capture those records, we can expose everything they have done to the Colony Council." The decision was made. The standoff on the road had given them an advantage. Proof that the mercenaries could be stopped. Now it was time to push further. As night fell, Elias stood outside the farmhouse, watching the lights of the mining site in the distance. They glowed like a cluster of stars on the horizon, each one a reminder of the challenge ahead. The air was still, but the weight of the coming battle was heavy. Tomorrow, the quiet campaign would end. Tomorrow, they would face the enemy head-on. The night was dark, but the plains of New Solara were alive with quiet anticipation. Elias Vance stood at the edge of a ridge overlooking the mercenary base near the mining site. The last few weeks had been a careful campaign of observation and disruption, but tonight was the final step. Tonight, they would confront the heart of the operation and ensure the safety of the colony. Rena Talvek hovered in her scout ship above the base, her sensors scanning every corner. From the ridge, Elias could see the dim lights of the perimeter and the silhouettes of vehicles lined up along the central yard. Darius Cole crouched beside him, carrying the portable shield generator. Arik Hale remained at the farmhouse via long-range comm, monitoring the enemy's communications and ready to provide interference if needed. Elias turned to his team. "This is it. We move carefully, strike decisively, and get out with the evidence. No unnecessary risks." Darius nodded, checking his equipment. "Ready as ever." Rena adjusted her ship, dropping a small flare that illuminated the perimeter. The shadows revealed the guards moving along the walls, unaware of what was coming. Elias took a deep breath. For the first time in weeks, he felt the familiar clarity of command. They advanced under the cover of darkness. Elias led the way, keeping to the shadows along the ridgeline. Darius followed, ready to deploy the shield generator if the base attempted to pursue them. Rena stayed above, guiding their movements and ensuring the path remained clear. As they neared the base, Elias signaled a stop. They observed the layout carefully. The command building was in the center, surrounded by storage units and supply depots. Guards patrolled in predictable patterns, and automated drones circled intermittently. Timing and precision were crucial. Elias motioned to Darius. Using small, silent devices, they disabled the nearest drones one by one. The machines fell to the ground without triggering alarms. With the path clear, they moved closer to the command building. Rena dropped another flare near the main entrance. The sudden light startled the remaining guards, drawing them toward the source. Elias and Darius slipped around the building, reaching the rear entrance. Elias used a small tool to bypass the security lock, and the door clicked open. Inside, the command center was quiet but filled with blinking consoles and communication devices. Elias approached the main terminal and began copying files onto a secure data drive. He could feel the weight of the operation in every line of code, every file labeled with corporate names and mercenary orders. This evidence would expose the full extent of their control over the colony. Darius kept watch at the doorway, ready to intercept anyone who might enter. Rena's sensors alerted them to movement outside. The remaining guards were investigating the source of the flare. Elias worked quickly, knowing time was short. Arek's voice came through the communicator. "They're moving toward the outer perimeter. You've got less than 5 minutes before they arrive." Elias nodded silently. He finished the file transfer and secured the drive. Darius activated the shield generator, creating a barrier that obscured their movements. As the guards approached, they found the area temporarily inaccessible. Confused and frustrated, the mercenaries shouted orders at one another, with a nod. From Elias, they exited the building and moved toward a small maintenance hangar. Rena's ship provided cover from above, creating flashes of light and heat that drew attention away from their path. They reached the hangar and found a cargo shuttle parked inside. Elias and his team boarded quickly, and Rena guided the shuttle toward the ridgeline. As they lifted off, the base below erupted into activity. Alarms sounded, guards scrambled, and drones took to the sky. But the team was already out of immediate danger. From above, Elias looked down at the base, seeing the chaos their careful plan had created. The mercenaries had been forced into confusion, unable to maintain control. The shuttle landed back at the farmhouse, where the settlers had gathered quietly in support. Elias stepped out carrying the data drive. "We have everything we need," he told the team. "This will expose them completely." Arek immediately began preparing the files for secure transmission to the Colony Council. Rena debriefed Elias on the remaining activity at the mining site, noting which areas were vulnerable and which had been neutralized. Darius checked the equipment to ensure it had not been damaged during the operation. By dawn, the first reports reached the council. The files detailed the corporation's manipulation, the illegal activities of Kestrel Force, and the threats made against the settlers. The council acted quickly, issuing orders to remove the mercenaries from New Solara and freezing the corporation's property claims. The colonists had legal protection, and the governor could no longer support the illegal takeover. The colony celebrated cautiously, but with hope. Farmers returned to their fields without fear. Traders reopened their shops, and the quiet hum of everyday life returned. Lyra ran across the plains, smiling, knowing her home was safe. Elias watched her from the ridge, a sense of pride swelling inside him. In the farmhouse, the team gathered one last time. They reviewed the mission and made sure all evidence had been securely transmitted. The stress and tension of the past weeks began to lift, replaced with quiet satisfaction. Elias looked at his team and said, "We did what needed to be done. The colony is safe, and our families can live without fear." Rena smiled. "It feels good to see all the pieces fall into place." Darius nodded, adjusting his gear. "Quiet work, precise strikes. That is how we win." Arek leaned back, exhaustion visible on his face. "And now, maybe it's time to let the past rest." Elias stepped outside, breathing the fresh morning air. The plains stretched endlessly, green and alive. The threat was gone, and the colony had endured. He knew that vigilance was always necessary, but for now, peace had returned. Lyra ran up to him, her eyes shining. "Daddy, everything is okay. Now?" "Yes," Elias said, lifting her into his arms. "Everything is okay." As the sun rose higher, the light touched every corner of the plains. The farm, the fields, and the quiet roads all glimmered with the promise of safety. Elias Vance, once a commander in distant battles, had defended his home without leaving it. The quiet heroism of one family had saved an entire colony. The team stood together on the ridge, watching the sun climb into the sky. They had faced danger, used skill and strategy, and protected what mattered most. Their actions would not be known in history books, but they had made a difference. Peace had been restored, and for Elias Vance and his daughter, life could finally continue as it should, under the sun, on the safe and quiet plains of New Solara.